So my birthday was the 2nd of January.
Yes, I know.
And yours was the 27th of January.
January is a good month.
Yes. And Ponce apparently is also close to having the same birthday date as you.
Okay. How close?
That's a good question. Because I haven't. Apparently, they just celebrated the 55th anniversary year. And I know the article which I read was posted in start of February. So I actually don't know the date.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you got me.
Let's just say it's the 27th then.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
So 55 years and 21,000 machines, because that was the news of the article that this was the 21,000 first machines, and they celebrated the 55th anniversary year.
Wow.
So
Did Ponce start as a company building these machines, or did they start building something before
That's
that?
actually a good question.
Because typically companies start building something else.
Yeah. Especially when they're from Finland, like Nokia.
Yeah, that
That's
was also
probably
my example.
why you said it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
So it was founded in 1997 by Anari Wittgren.
did you say 97?
1970.
Okay. Now, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I said, but that was...
Yeah.
If I said something else...
Oh, I get you now.
Yeah.
I just thought you said 97 because that didn't work with the 55 years.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, 97. That makes 7.
Yeah, so it's actually created by a forest machine entrepreneur or contractor, it probably is. Einari Wittgren.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they started off by building...
Yeah.
Okay, back in the 70s.
Now, I haven't looked into the history of this company, but he probably had like a need for a machine.
That's typically how things are built.
Then created one.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do some series on some of these large manufacturers.
Yeah, and it is actually in line with what I have brought to the table today.
Oh.
A little.
You're kickstarting the series today.
Yeah, let's say that it's not on the machines like Ponce are creating, but they are part of the history at least.
Ponce?
No, but that's the general evolution.
Okay. Okay. I know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So that was just
Well, congrats to Ponce and 21,000 machines.
Yeah, 21,000 machines.
21,000 machines.
And it's a Ponce Buffalo, I think it's said. Buffalo.
Of just the one machine?
No.
Okay.
The machine number 21,000 was a Ponce Buffalo.
Oh. Yeah, and we've been to this thing in Germany called Ligna. What is it called? I can't remember now.
Ligna?
Yeah, but the Danish word for those things are I can't even get that now.
Then it's hard for me to help you.
The thing is called Ligna, but what is it?
A fair?
Fair. Yes, sorry. Yeah, in Germany, and there was a lot of Ponce machines on display with John Deere and Komatsu, I think.
Yeah,
they had like the 3 big ones, and it would be nice to hear. Ponce 21,000. I wonder how many John Deere, but they also do a lot of other machines. So.
They also do a lot of other machines, yes.
Yeah, so that's probably not fair to...
Yeah, but let's do a series on forestry machinery.
That would be cool.
Somewhere out in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome to this week's episode. It's episode 19 of The Foresting Tomorrow. And of course, together with me, we have Rasmus Pedersen. And myself, Jens Isbak.
Yeah.
And this is today's episode.
Yeah.
So I actually have a follow-up from last time because we talked about the US and Canada dispute.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's a softwood dispute. And I've been looking into the history of the dispute. So at least we, the two of us, know what's up and down.
That'd be nice to know.
So it's actually a long-standing dispute between the US and Canada on softwood. And it's actually sometimes referred to as the lumber wars. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's something that's been going on for decades. And the reason why they have this dispute is, of course, the two countries are really close to each other, and of course, both of them has the possibility to export a lot of products between the two countries. And the key issue with the dispute is that in Canada, most forests are publicly owned by the government and managed by the government, and they sell timber rights at set prices.
Okay.
And in the US, most of the forests are privately owned, and the prices are set by the market.
By market, yeah.
Yeah. So US, they argue that timber from Canada is comes with subsidized.
Yeah, it's not operating on market terms.
Yes.
It's subsidized, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, a lot of timber is imported into US.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So it actually dates back to, I don't know how far it actually dates back, but the first agreement made to sort of handle this dispute was launched or agreed to in 82. And it lasted until 96, and it's what's called the Softwood Lumber Agreement 1.
Okay.
So the first major dispute began in early 1990s when the U.S. lumber industry complained about Canadian subsidies. After multiple rounds of investigations, countervailing duties, import taxes, were imposed on Canadian softwood. This led to the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement, FTA, and later the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. Yeah. But even though they created this agreement, there's a lot of tension still.
The battle
continued.
Yeah.
And then they came up with the Softwood Lumber Agreement 2 in 96, which lasted until 2001. So the idea with this was to limit Canadian softwood exports through quotas and export fees, but it expired in 01. So the US again imposed duties, leading to legal battles under NAFTA and the World Trade Organization. And then in 2006, a new one was created. The US refunded billions in collected duties and agreed to limit further trade restrictions. The deal lasted until 15, when it expired, reigniting the conflict. So it's been, ongoing.
Yeah, it never stops.
Yeah. So the current dispute, that sort of started when the last one expired.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So in 2017, the U.S. Department of Commerce imposed new duties, arguing that Canada continued to unfairly subsidize its lumber industry. And Canada challenged the tariffs at both the WTO and the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which is the successor to NAFTA. And despite rulings in favor of Canada, tension remained high as both sides accused the other of unfair practices. Yeah. And again, now there's been added stuff on top of this with the tariffs towards Canada, it's 25%.
It's not just lumber anymore.
No.
Yeah, okay. Well, when you describe it like this, the whole things with subsidizing it, you know, that we know about that from farming.
Yeah.
It's also been done. It's been done all over Europe, and it's also done in the US for corn.
Yeah.
Heavily subsidized.
Yeah.
So,
and it's actually quite fun. There's a video on YouTube. I think you should go have a look. But it talks a lot about tariffs, how tariff works.
Okay, yeah.
And do you know about the chicken war? Have you heard about that?
No, but it's just so that everything is a war. You know?
Yeah. But it's actually a quite funny case because post-war, World War II, apparently US began to produce a lot of chicken meat.
Yeah.
And
with the rise of the McChicken.
Maybe. And the market for chicken meat was really, growing exponentially. And then and that was a huge sort of it was impacting German producers of chicken meat. And they then introduced tariffs on chicken in 1962, and that more or less completely killed it. I think it was, now I can't remember the prices exactly, but I think it was maybe an added cost of somewhere in the range of, I think, 30%. Okay. So it completely killed it.
Yeah.
And then US imposed tariffs on imported trucks.
Yeah, because they did it.
Yeah. A lot of 25%. Yeah. And in the story of the I was about to say article, but it's a video. The story of the video is that you should really think twice about adding tariffs, because normally they will not go away again.
Yeah.
So the 25% on trucks
that's still there.
Imported to US is still there.
That's also when have been living in the US.
Yeah.
And coming from Europe, where I don't know the numbers, but it seems like 4 out of 5 cars come from Germany, right? There's so many from Volkswagen, and so on. And of course, they also own a lot of the other companies creating cars now.
Mm-hmm.
But going to the US, and especially on trucks, they're all Ford,
all American,
Dodge, all American. Yeah. You don't see.
That's but now I know that's the chicken war.
That's the chicken war that started that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another fun story, which is also covered in the video. So last time Trump was in office, he had a thing with washing machines. I don't know if you remember.
Okay.
He came to the conclusion that washing machines was, I won't say too expensive, but at least he wanted. He actually imposed tariffs on washing machines, imported washing machines. Right?
Okay.
And the funny thing about this, and of course, American first, thinking we'll, this will benefit domestic producers because people won't buy,
the good ones from Germany.
Probably, a bit further out, east.
Chinese.
Yeah, and also
Japanese. And Korean.
Exactly. Yeah. So he put tariffs on washing machines. And the funny thing, what happened is that, of course, the prices went up on the imported washing machines, but also the domestic machines prices also went up.
Yeah, because they were cheaper.
So now it was just equal playing field, right?
Yeah.
And the other funny thing that happened was that normally when you buy a washing machine, you also buy a dryer.
Yeah.
So prices on dryers also went up because, they should be fairly equal, those two prices. So prices went up on domestic produced products and a whole new category of products. So dryers. Right?
Yeah.
And, years has gone, and now they have sort of tried to come up with numbers of, that thing he did. How many jobs did it actually create?
Yeah.
And the number they've come up with is 1,800 new jobs.
On the washing machine business.
Yeah, for those. Yeah. So those that produce washing machines in US.
Yeah.
And now I can't remember the number, but you could just do the math. It cost consumers $800 and $15,000 per new job created.
I guess they...
And again, one of the conclusions in the video is that you could easily create new jobs that's way cheaper than that.
Yeah, and again, have been living in the US also and used the US washing machines. I can tell you, but you've probably also tried them. They're also way worse than what we have here.
Yeah,
they are so bad.
Yeah.
So, hey, come on, use the good ones. Let's have a market where the good ones win and not put these tariffs on things.
Yeah. Yeah. So. But I'm not. I won't say that tariffs and trade agreements and stuff like that won't have a place. I'm no expert to comment on that, but it's just when you read through some of this stuff, it's
yeah, and
it just makes you think, right?
Yeah, I can't say that if they work or not or anything else like that. Again, I'm not an expert. It's just sometimes you get into these and it just seems like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I also saw a clip from one of these talk show hosts. I can't remember his name right now. One of the American ones, big ones.
Yeah.
With a clip of a video clip of Trump saying that this agreement is the worst ever made.
Yeah, I know.
Who's the idiot that made this?
Yeah.
And then he goes back, oh, yeah, that was Trump. The last time he was. But, okay, that's Trump, but it could have been anyone, That's just how it works. No,
But Trump, he's... he's...
very verbal.
Yeah, but he's also very good at that, he decides something, creates a problem, and then he comes in and saves us all.
Yeah.
And takes the credit for saving us.
In on the rocket,
Yeah. It's just so funny.
Did you know that there's also a dispute between Denmark and Canada?
Nope.
It's about a small island between Greenland and Canada.
Ah, yes, I know.
Where each year... we're claiming this island each year from each other. So it's a fun...
and it costs us...
Yeah, probably a lot. But
a lot of money just... I think... I can't remember where I've heard it. I think it's like several employees,
Yeah, you have to pay someone to go out there and plant the flag every time. And
that just works on this. It gets paid. Yeah. Yeah,
you're
right.
But maybe just, in the realm of wasting money. I don't know. Are you also following what's going on in the US with this Doge department thing with Elon Musk? What they have found for now?
No.
Okay.
Not when you put it like that.
So the first thing they did was going through something called USAID, which is a department in the US that offers aid to other countries.
Yeah, okay, then I know.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. But there's some of the things, and, I know how politics work, and, sometimes you use, to get something through, you give a little here and there, but some of the things they find is also just like, you think, oh, God.
Yeah.
Like...
Do you remember the numbers that they read out?
Yeah, they all are in the millions. Some of them are $300 million for something.
Is it really so high?
Yeah, some of them are.
Okay.
And some of them are just like 2 million for teaching dance classes in Zimbabwe or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like everyone could just, ask for money there, and somehow they were granted. And I know it's to do something for a minority here, and then we bargain it. So it seems like USAID became like a bargain place where you...
Yeah.
But the thing is, with stuff like this, and I understand that stuff like this is going on, but when you reveal all of it in once, and you can see the rates going on in America now, and you can see how this will help Trump.
Yeah.
Look what he is doing, but and the next, as far as I understood, one of they're going into is the medical,
Yeah.
So it's a crazy time. Somehow it's also nice. I like that everything is surfaced, at least because all citizens should know what their money is going for. I think, and I understand that in a democracy, things evolve and you don't always in control, but sometimes, just sometimes.
You're
right.
Look
into it.
You're right.
But
But I also think there's a lot of politics going on.
Yeah, there, of course. I don't know anything.
Everything is used just to smears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, that was the lumber wars.
The lumber wars, and a little on tariffs in general, and
chicken wars and a lot of wars.
Everything is a war.
Yeah,
but isn't that one thing? I've read a book about wars. If you can't have a war if you don't know how you're going to win it, because then it's just forever. So don't start wars you don't know how to win. So I don't know who won the chicken war. I guess Germany.
But not really. Not really.
It became the washing dryer war, and then became the truck war.
If you think of it, I mean, the automobile industry was the loser of it.
Yeah, and then there was a dryer. I don't know.
Yeah, but the losers in that particular case, that's the consumer in US.
But I guess it's also still the consumer in the US, because if they could have had a cheaper, and maybe also quality wise better one. Not to claim anything about American cars, but but that's what a free market creates. That creates better products for a smaller price.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah.
So
it should. The consumer should benefit from it.
Yeah. No, okay.
Okay. Enough with wars.
Yeah. So my outset for this podcast was I was thinking about, we like to also be on the forefront on technology within forestry and so on.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, we know that a lot of manual felling has changed.
Yep.
Or hasn't changed. We are evolving away from manual felling into mechanized felling with these large machines, coming back to Ponce.
Mm-hmm.
So they have also taken a lot of that away. But then there has to be some evolution within the manual felling.
Yeah.
You can also... Yeah, so I was thinking, what has evolved and where does all this come from? And then we... go down a rabbit hole somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought about, because there wasn't that much of evolution from my point of view. I know there's some evolution in the chainsaw and so on. But then I wanted to have a look at the history in it. And we went from manual saws, these two, it's called of course axis, but also these, it's called misery whips. Did you know
misery whips?
Yeah, do you know where you have one in each end?
Yeah.
Pulling that as I guess the misery whips is because this is effing hard to do. So that's not fun. And back then, it was really labor intense, the whole tree felling industry, because you had no machines at all.
Yeah.
So really hard work. But then in this 1900s, 20, we came to the development of these chainsaws, which have revolutionized totally tree felling.
Yeah. At what year did you say?
Let me see. It's the mid. Can I have chainsaws? The first one I have. Just a second. So the very first chainsaw was actually developed for surgery.
Surgery?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the 1800s, in 1783, by a German. Let me see. I think it was
a German.
No, two Scottish doctors.
Okay.
And it was to get rid of diseased bone, or So and then it evolved from there, and that was it's still a manual-driven chainsaw, but and then it evolved into these mechanical things for wood cutting, and the first mechanized one. Let me see if I can find that.
I actually have an article here that says it's 90 years anniversary, and it's back from 16.
Yeah, that's probably...
So it's getting close to 100.
Yeah.
1926.
Yeah, okay. The first one-man chainsaw was introduced in 1950. It was still a heavy saw,
Okay, so
but you can have chainsaws that are not with mechanized.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have chainsaws that need 2 people to operate because they're so heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the average weight back in 59, says is 12 kilos. And now they typically weigh between 4 and 5 kilos.
Yeah.
So a lot of what went into the evolution of chainsaws has been to reduce weight, ergonomics, make them so you can work with them for many hours so you don't get all the vibrations and so on.
Yeah.
So that created this where each time before that, when you had to fell a tree, you needed to be more than one person because you needed axes and these large saws and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And just today, 85 to 90% of logging in developed countries is mechanized.
Yeah.
So you almost have nothing of that left. You of course have some places where you still use an axe, but almost done. And where do you still have manual felling, but a lot of countries have also moved way more towards these machineries like Ponce Create and John Deere.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still times where you need manual felling, especially too large trees, right?
Yeah.
Or where you can't in the terrain, you can't get into it.
Mm-hmm.
These machines. Yeah. Okay, now I have a whole list of what I wanted to go through, but the history of the chainsaw. It was in 1926, the first electric chainsaw.
26?
1926, that is an electric chainsaw, not on a gas. That's in 29. This here first gasoline-powered chainsaw.
Okay.
Created by Stihl.
Yeah, you're actually right, because it's Andreas Stihl.
Yeah.
In 26.
Yeah, he created
electromotor.
Yeah.
Pulling the chain.
Yes. And
weighing about 45 to 53 kilos.
Yeah. And back then, electrical motors were there.
Yeah.
But they were big and heavy. So it was hard to get them. But then they created this smaller gasoline-powered and put that on.
Yeah.
In 29, sorry.
Yeah.
And then it says here 1947, it's the first one-man chainsaw. And then
took a while.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why it took that much, but yeah. And then in 1959, this one-man came, which it was also Stihl, actually, who introduced that one.
Okay.
And of course, yeah, as I also went in through, it changed the whole way of manual felling.
Yeah.
The industry completely, because now one man could do a lot of the work. But that also led to, which also often happened, because back in the days, injuries, fatalities was not big concern, but now
it's just part of the job.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, then a lot of the evolution came into making them more safe.
Mm.
So if a chain is and it breaks and it just keeps going, then it becomes very dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you can get the chain in the head and stuff like that. So then you have all this evolution of that, stopping that, and again the ergonomics in it, and so on. And then they were developed clothing for it. So that boots you can't go into, and trousers and so on. And of course, all these things around it. But there's not a lot of evolution going on. As there is, but it's not groundbreaking.
Seen from your point of view.
Yeah, it's not groundbreaking. And again, maybe coming back to this with injuries, I just wanted to have how dangerous is it actually? So in the US, it's the fatality rate is 15 times higher than the national average.
Okay.
So it's a dangerous job if you look at it like that.
Yeah.
And in New Zealand, it's actually 300 times more.
Wow.
It says here, manual fellers are 300 times more likely to die at work than the average worker.
Okay.
I don't know why there's such a big difference between those two statistics. And that actually the main cause of injuries and deaths is because you get something hit you in the head.
Okay.
Or the tree is falling down on you. So that's also why now one of the main things is that you actually get education in doing this.
Okay.
How do you actually fell a tree so you limit the risk?
So you live to see it.
Yeah.
In products.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and that's also, from Denmark, you need to go through an education to have a full. So, but then we have had a talk about these exoskeletons coming in because given that I say there was not a lot of evolution on this groundbreaking evolution, it's still the same thing going on. The groundbreaking evolution, I guess, in felling of trees is the machines, which are really high tech.
Yeah.
But there are some work in exoskeletons on this. Husqvarna, which is also one of the big producers of chainsaws, they have made at least a development project on it, and also other universities are working in this area, like in the universities in US and Canada. But again, it's on this level. There are no commercial product available. There are commercially. Hilti has actually an exosuit available, passive.
Hilti?
Yes.
What's that for?
So it's
construction in general, or
it's called EXO-S shoulder exoskeleton, and it's not that related to manual tree felling.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing I could find that was an actual product in this area where you can buy it. I can even see the price here. It's $1,500.
Yeah.
But that is for assisting your shoulders when working above your head.
Yeah.
And you probably don't do that a lot with a chainsaw, maybe sometimes. So there's something there, but there's not. But again, the market is probably also limited, given that not a lot of people. we are replacing people with machines.
Machines.
Yeah. But then I was thinking about this future scenario. Why these manual fellers, given that what their job is typically is to go in and pick out one tree and take that out, or pick out a few ones and take that out.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice if, why haven't they like a head-up display in the helmet where you just, that's, all the trees are green, but this one is red, take that out, and so on. That could be, that'd be nice. But of course, there's nothing like that.
Or maybe it will display some Netflix series.
While?
Yeah.
Yeah. That could also be.
When they walk from one tree to another.
Yeah. And so...
But maybe some, I don't know.
Yeah, but
Facebook goggles.
Yeah.
Meta goggles. What's the name of it?
I can't remember. They were called Oculus back in the day, but probably something else now. But again, now, manual felling is becoming a niche, and it's specialized workers, probably something that you can earn a lot of money on, moving forward, being one of those specialized at it, because there are a lot of technique in doing it correctly. Especially, you have also seen these felling trees around houses and so on, how precise they can do it, and so yeah, I don't know how that is evolving. Of course, safety around it will always be a concern.
Yeah, we could talk to Moses at some point.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have.
You'll have a lot of insights on this.
Yeah. So I don't know where it's going, but we also saw back to Ligna here that tree felling is also a sport.
Yeah, it sure is.
And that probably also happens with a lot of things. Back in the days, we needed to be able to throw spears and shoot arrows and run really a lot. Spears to hunt.
Yeah,
but that's sports now, so that's probably what happens.
Yeah,
it becomes a sport. I don't know if you had to throw a spear for your livelihood. Probably not.
No. But I have used a chainsaw a few times.
You probably have bought one just to use it a few times.
Yeah.
You're one of those.
It's a very simple one. Electrical one.
How long does that hold? Because that's also one of the evolutions is actually going back to electrical motors.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing. We all know that. You go out and buy some power tool, which you don't really need. So you'll use it.
Yeah. 2 times?
Seldom. I think I've maybe used mine maybe 10 times.
Yeah, and is that one where you only have the battery for that one? Or
No, it's not even a battery. It's just corded.
Oh, okay. But I think that's actually better when you use it only a few times, because I bought a heck clipper.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's called.
Yeah, I actually searched for that not too long ago. What was the name? Yeah.
Right now, what is a heck even called?
It's not called anything with heck.
No, probably
I'm pretty sure. But anyway.
Yeah, to cut really small branches and leaves.
Yeah.
But I bought that one with a battery.
Yeah.
And, 1 year after, the battery died. So I can't use it for anything. And a new battery costs as much as a machine. So if something you use not that often, yeah.
What's the brand?
Something Texas or something from Bilka.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
don't buy that crap. Why not?
Yeah, I think it actually was a bit. I wanted one with cord, but I couldn't find one. It was a.
You couldn't find one?
No, not one with cord.
It's because you're in Bilka.
Yeah, probably. I was also other places.
Netto.
Harald Nyborg. No.
Come on.
I think I was on other places.
Go to a proper store.
Yeah. You could find one on gas.
Yeah. But
I didn't need that.
It's annoying.
Yeah, I didn't need that.
It's much better with batteries. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
My dad actually, now he also have a farm, but he actually has a version with 2, I think, either 1 or 2 36 volts batteries. And he says they are more powerful than whatever he's had of gasoline. And it's just so nice because it's especially used around, where we keep animals not locked in, but with fences.
Yeah.
And he needs to walk a lot. So he don't have it, the gasoline running all the time and need to start it up, and it's just and then move on.
But it also makes sense, electrical motors are better.
Yeah.
The productivity, or how can you say, is much better than gasoline-driven motors.
Yeah.
The only problem that have been is packing the energy.
Yeah.
Small enough.
Yeah.
Where gasoline was nice, right? Because it didn't take up a lot of space, and you can just refill it all the time.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
But the one I have at home, it's not. It's a pretty lightweight, which is good. But there are certain part of it's a beach. What's it called? Hick. What is it actually called?
Yeah,
a hedge. Is it a hedge?
Yeah, that's probably something.
But sometimes I also have a corded one, which is more powerful. And it really works good whenever I'm in need of some extra power.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's, hedge is the word, at least according to Translate. Yeah, but just one point I missed here is that one of the things actually coming, I think, from these manufacturers is AI-assisted chainsaws.
Okay.
I think they are just using the word AI because it's cool here. But that's something about how you...
what should the AI do?
It should control the speed of the chain according to what you are cutting into.
Okay.
So like adapt to how... what is the density of the wood? Yeah. And that should make it use less power. You only use the power needed. You don't overpower it, and also make sure you don't get stuck and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They call it AI power.
Okay. Now, I'm not into the dynamics of the workload on a machine, but I think the only sort of place where I see that could be a great idea is that if there's certain dynamics involved where you could actually, overpower something or, stress it, if you know what level you can stress it to, and it will sort of monitor that and adapt to that.
Yeah.
So you could maybe, make the machines more simple in terms of used material or something like that.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah, and I'm not into the...
I have no idea how, the dynamics on such a machine.
The same here. And again, I think this AI-powered, AI-assisted, it's not that, advanced, would be my guess. But let's see. And one thing if for people out there is that I would like, that if anyone have moved, in a professional way to electrical-driven chainsaws, is that actually being done now? As far as I've read, it's still, the old classic ones. Yeah.
The classic ones. Okay, let's wrap it up.
Yes.
Enough said on
chainsaws.
Machines for now, or chainsaws for now. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.